Good morning, guys. So Emma and I are heading out to Brinkley RV, and it is a cold one. It's 26 degrees, so hopefully we're not outside for too long, but it'll be an interesting juxtaposition to Grand Design. So Brinkley is, I don't want to say a spin-off, but the executive team at Brinkley is from the executive team at Grand Design, and so they're taking some of that knowledge, and they're a pretty well-regarded company overall. It'll be interesting to see, like, do they deserve all of that recognition? Where are the weak points in these RVs, or based on everything that we've seen, in over 10 years of investigating RVs and quality and this, are they worth the extra pennies, or is it a lot of hype? I have a few preconceived notions I'm going to challenge, and well, we'll find out. Let's go. So we just got back from our Brinkley factory tour, and we took a little bit of time to go work out, take a shower, kind of reset a little bit and gather our thoughts. We took the Model Z tour, which is a big fifth wheel that they have. We also got a little peek at the Model I, which is a bumper pulled travel trailer. It was also kind of funny because the Model I that we went into, I forget which number it was actually very similar to the Z3100 fifth wheel that apparently is their most popular, and we also happened to tour. It was just like a shorter version with a little less storage. Quite interesting experience, I think, overall, and having just gone through the Grand Design tour and becoming a little familiar with their products as well, it's kind of an interesting comparison. I have some unique thoughts, I think, but I'll let you share your thoughts first.
I think for not being fifth wheel people, they were nice. They're big, which
huge.
Yeah, they're just very big, but they seem decent quality. And in terms of design, you kind of get one thing, and they do say they do that so that it keeps it consistent across all product, which I can appreciate. Hopefully you like that one thing. It does sound like they take a lot of customer input into the designs. One of the things he kept emphasizing was customer feedback drives quality and improvement in the product, and so they're always improving based on customer feedback, which I can appreciate.
We saw some of that. We
did see some of that, and there was another couple on the tour with us who have a floor plan very similar to that, and they were saying that this wasn't in ours, and this isn't ours, and this is an upgrade, and this is something different, and so you can see apparently there is improvement or change at least. So that's nice. Overall, it didn't knock my socks off, but they seem nice. They seem well built. They seem decent quality. I don't know. We didn't look at the price tag before we went, but we looked after, and I don't think they're worth the price tag, personally.
No, and we didn't want to have any preconceived notions about what to expect. We wanted to look at just the quality because that's what Brinkley is known for, and nobody talks about the prices. But everybody says they are worth the price. And after seeing the prices of some of them, I don't know about that.
Well, and I thought it was interesting too that they do things to keep them in the price bracket that they are. So he was like, well, we don't put batteries in the trailers or the fifth wheels because
we'll talk about that. Yeah,
because it prices us out, which is an interesting choice.
Yeah,
I think they're nice. I don't think we would ever pick one, but they're pretty.
And fundamentally, we don't need this space. The more space you have, the more there is to clean and maintain, and especially in this case, maintain. There's a lot of slides, a lot of weight. It's more weight on your vehicle. It's more money that you're going to end up spending. And these units are not cheap. So I'll let you figure out the prices on some of these. But I will say, I'm really glad we can take photos because it really helps illustrate the process. But kind of starting from the very beginning, the chassis, comparing to Grand Design, actually, I think Grand Design kind of overbuilds their chassis a little bit. I was kind of surprised. They also have an independent suspension standard on the Solitude lines. Not something that we were seeing until you get to the G line, which is above the Z. And if you're wondering why GZI, it's supposed to spell rigs eventually. Very similar to the S3XY by Tesla. Funny. I like a lot of what the company's doing, but when we're looking at the foundation of the trailers, you're paying a lot of money. You're paying a lot of money. I didn't see the advantage in the frame at all, but they are custom designing their frames, they're testing their frames. That it's awesome. I'm glad we could take pictures. All in all, I'd say Grand Design versus the Brinkley frames, especially having them, you know, side by side almost. Honestly, I didn't see much of an advantage. I think they're triple powder coated. Like they have minute details that they do better than the next guy. That at the end of the day, I don't know that it's going to matter all that much. And everybody's going to claim their frame is the best and this and that. And so I didn't see the advantage. I did see that Grand Design is putting independent, which still has an axle across, but independent suspension on more of their rigs, which is kind of cool to see. One thing that we were seeing on the tanks, for example, and some of the Z line, they have 150 gallons of fresh water. Like, it was pretty impressive.
That's really actually pretty nice. That was a big advantage.
And depending on the model, of course, in the layout. And then we were seeing, I think the gentleman said tank heaters were standard.
Correct.
It's not something we saw from Grand Design. So, you know, is that something you get add after the fact? I'd say so. We were also seeing brass fittings instead of plastic fittings for PEX, and then they use a hydraulic crimper. That's awesome. You know, but then Grand Design's, you know, kind of saying the same thing. So pros and cons either way, right? They're both ducting into the belly. That's a pretty standard thing. One thing that Brinkley was doing though is wiring harnesses. That's a pretty big deal. It saves the end consumer potential funds, but you know, wiring harness is a little bit easier to trace and all that. And when I asked him, actually, I said, okay, so if we needed to get a wiring diagram, we could get that. But it sounds like they wouldn't just give you a wiring diagram.
They would give you
have a reason.
Yeah, you need to have a reason, and they have to be selectively asked for to the right person who gets approvals to give you the thing, maybe, depending on what your project is.
Did not like that at all.
Yeah.
It's my product. Give me the damn wiring diagram, so.
Yeah. They do get their wiring harnesses from a Canadian automotive company, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. They have electric gate valves that apparently are just Velcroed onto a motor. So if you had to override this, you could just remove the Velcro and slip off, and you could still manually operate the gate for the dump valves. So that's cool. They also give you a hatch underneath because I think they may have learned a lesson that needs to be accessible. So I respect the upgrade there, like that little learning process.
But you do have to crawl all the way under your fifth wheel to access it.
100%. They will allow you to tow with water in your tank, and they do warranty for full time. So I thought that was kind of cool. Just kind of nice to see. Then looking at the floors, I wasn't super blown away with the flooring build. They're using Darko, and they're using vinyl that's laid out and it's stapled along the edges. That's kind of industry standard. They are not, however, gluing the floor down, which is cool because if you just need to cut a section out, you can just cut a section out and then glue in the replacement, and it should you tear into your floor.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There was something about it. It didn't seem that great.
I think as long as it's not a problem, then it's not a problem.
Right, and that's just it. The problem I did see, though, personally, is the OSB. And they called it marine grade OSB, but I did not see any lacquer on the top. I didn't see any sealants whatsoever. And this is something that we saw OSB in quite a few places, including on the roof, and I didn't like that.
Yeah, and it was a subfloor. Yeah, it was quite a few places.
But we'll talk about some other materials because I just wasn't impressed with anything.
No.
Anything I saw, materials-wise, I wasn't really impressed with.
And I was surprised by the amount of staples we saw, just generally. I think there's a time and a place for staples. I just feel like maybe some of the places they were putting them was not the place for them.
Like with all these fixed wheel manufacturers, they're going to run the wires under the floor, and it was a little bit cleaner, but it didn't blow me away like this shot where it's all kind of getting pulled out, and it was just a little bit tidier, but you're going to have wires either way. I did find it kind of interesting that they go ahead and they fill the water tank because they want to make sure.
That's actually nice, yeah. So they fill the water tank and they keep it full from basically when they're installed and the frame slipped over all the way through the process, and they drain them at the very end of the build. Yeah,
and so where if the OSB kind of turned me off, it was the first point where it kind of turned me off, and I think that's fair to say. Like, we were probably both feeling that. I really got turned off when we started seeing the wall materials, and it is the exact same crap that you see everywhere else.
Yeah.
It is lumber core, and when I asked about lumber core, like, why are they using it? And obviously it gives a nice finish, and it's lighter weight, and they claim that it's cheaper. I don't know how it could be that much cheaper using MDF and basically the MDF material, which is fine sawdust that's compacted and kind of glued together around a pine or other lumber type material, and then you can kind of shave it into place, and then they put a wallpaper over that. It sucks, period. So I was really disappointed to see how much of that they're using. I think they're using like 1x2s in some of the places, which is totally fine, but I think we saw a little bit of maybe some mildew on one or two of the lumber pieces is what I noticed.
Yeah.
That could have just been some sort of ink that spread. I don't know.
They do say they keep all of their lumber indoors, like all of their materials are kept inside their facility in a
nice facility.
in a temperature controlled space, which it is a very nice facility.
A lot of money went into that. Yeah,
Yeah.
they have 7 facilities so far.
Yeah, and they set it up so that everyone's getting treated well, and like all the it's very ergonomic for all their workers and things like that. So
AC in the summer is a nice thing.
yeah, so they say it's all kept inside and treated nicely, but who knows?
Well, but like when we're looking at the cutouts, you know, the walls are starting to go up on the side. I was so unimpressed at that point that I'm just like, what is that? You know what I mean? Like, I see things that are not really very well supported. I'm seeing a lot of lumbercore, a lot of wallpaper. I don't like to see that, especially not in the bathroom. There was a lot of points that I'm just like, why? Well, I don't know. And that is again, that's industry standard, but the industry standard is crap. And we know that. I think they pay a little bit more attention to the crap they're putting in, but at the end of the day, it's crap. If you get a little leak and your whole RV is totaled, it is crap, in my opinion. Feel free to argue with me in the comments there. Right along with that lumbercore, they're using a lot of Luan. We're seeing a lot of Luan throughout. Again, industry standard. I don't like to see it, and that's what you're paying for. You know, when you get to the $200,000 price point, I shouldn't see Luan on my walls. I don't think that's too crazy.
Yeah.
But they're using it and they're proud. And one of the things that they did really well was the hardware, like the design of the whole thing. And apparently there's 5 guys that own this primarily. It's not owned by a, Winnebago, Thor, or Forest River or Rev Group. And so they can basically make changes pretty well. Like, they're really tidy people. Apparently the owners they actually use the product. I think at least 2 of them are on site actually there at the factory.
Yeah.
And I think the design is pretty nice. It's a little, kind of monotone. It's sort of this modernist design. There's nothing wrong with it inherently, but it is for a very particular customer.
Yeah, and like I like it personally,
Yeah.
but if you don't like it, you don't have another option.
Exactly. And so, we're seeing, I thought, really pretty champagne hardware, but then, when you look at the kitchen cabinetry, you're seeing that lumber core, the cutout lumber core. And so, yeah, it makes sense. They go, yeah, we have a father-son team that makes our cabinetry. They're Amish. And I'm like, but it doesn't matter. They can put together crap and it's still crap. You know what I mean? So, but that's, I have a strong opinion on that. I think after our we've had some pretty bad experiences with this. I did see like a really solid, so they have center islands, which is really kind of a cool, like bougie sort of feature. It's extra luxury. This is not camping. This is not glamping. This is just living in style. Honestly, the cabinetry is probably still better than some of the crap we've seen in brand new builds, houses, which is kind of nuts. So, yeah, I mean, we're seeing like the metal basically holster for the center island. I don't think the center island is going to go anywhere anytime soon.
No, they also do run the ducting through that, which is nice.
Yeah, and so there's no floor disturbance, which is cool. Like they're picking up the little things people don't like and then figuring out a workaround, which is really quite something. He claims that this material here was Eternabond that they put around the edges of the vinyl so that maybe the water would go and wick out. I thought that was interesting, but we started to see that. I don't think it was very well applied.
Yeah, I think they also use Turnabout on the roof.
Outlet placement did seem pretty decent in there. And again, without good wiring, I don't think you're gonna have a lot of warranty issues with wiring in particular. When we were looking at sidewalls, they're using Asdel in the walls, a pretty thick Asdel. Some models, if you get the full body paint, you get a much thicker Phylon wall. He called it Phylon, actually. That's cool. I kind of want the thick wall regardless. Yeah. When we look at a cutout of a unit, the fiberglass or the Phylon or whatever that material is, we're looking at the cutout, the side cutout. It wasn't very thick.
And they give you thicker, I think it was like 4.7 millimeters on the exterior wall and then 2.7 millimeters on the interior wall. So you're getting a thinner interior wall, which I guess kind of makes sense, but also like just make it all thick.
Yeah.
Give me the thick boy.
Well, and it's, obviously everything adds weight, but that, like, I think people would be okay with that.
Make it as durable as possible.
I didn't see any major issues. And one of the things that I noticed is that they're using a lot of square windows, 90-degree angles on everything. And historically, companies wouldn't do that because what it would end up causing is that weight and that force would go into the corners, and then there wouldn't be like a nice round relief. And so what that causes is cracking the fiberglass or Phylon or whatever that siding is. In this instance, they actually are using frames, so aluminum frames, so the frame of the wall will actually take that brunt of force, not the fiberglass itself. So I guess they have not had much, at least self-reported, issues with that. And I am certain that at this point, they'd probably know if there were going to be issues with the square windows. So they do have their own sidewall lamination systems, which I think about every company has now. I wasn't blown away with it. I wasn't too concerned, but I wasn't blown away.
Right.
It seemed fine.
Yeah, it was fine. We didn't get to go to that plant, though, to see it either, so we just kind of got to see the finished product. Yeah,
in a lot of the slide outs, they are going to use a Eternabond on all of the edges. They build slide outs separately, and it's cool. whatever. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing to write home about, nothing good, nothing bad. One thing I did actually like to see in the slide outs is if they did have a window, they were using the same frameless, kind of nice 90-degree angle, nice residential style window. They're not cheaping out and putting like a rubber ringed window, an older style window,
Yeah,
which a
they
lot of
do look
companies will
nice.
cheap there.
Yeah, they do look nice.
In some of the tubing, because when you run a self-tapping screws, when we saw a lot of self-tapping screws, which I'd rather see over staples, but in order to attach those walls, we weren't seeing bolts from anything I could see. There was no bolts, but it was a lot of self-tapping screws. They were going into a composite material that's about as specific as you got, which is fine, whatever, for a lot of the pieces at the front over the truck bed, but not necessarily at the other end of the fifth wheel, like where they would put a piece of pine on the rear end, but the front end might get that composite material. The reason is that pine might not be cut consistently, and there might be some flexing and things like that. You might lose some bite there. If you're gonna put it in one spot, put it in the entire thing, right?
Yeah, and they're running it through the aluminum channels, and so I think that, like, yes, it's probably easier to run a piece of wood through there. They're not going to fit perfectly.
Cheaper.
It's probably cheaper, but the composite's going to be better. It's not going to hold moisture. It's just like...
It's a great example of like, they did this thing better here, but they didn't do it consistently. But I also have to wonder how much of that sidewall separation, frame flex, because you do need some flexing. And actually, when we talked about frame flex, he goes, yes, our roof is what takes the majority of the twisting. That's where when that flexing is going to happen. And it just threw up a huge red flag, and I don't think that flag ever went back down.
Yeah, he's like, you have to have a give point. He conceded you do have to have a give point, but he said our give point is the roof, the wood roof, not the aluminum or steel.
Horrible. So, in my opinion, it is, again, you could have one of these, you can be very gentle with it and probably never have a problem, but most people are not. Most people don't know. You might buy one of these like 10 years old and you're, oh, I'm really excited, and who knows how it's been abused or used or not, right? You may not have a problem, but again, looking at how they construct these units, I don't know, it just didn't blow me away by any means. I did like seeing their core values, and I think they had a few different signs.
They had them all over the place,
like, attitude is everything. I kind of like seeing that. In their core values, the customer experience is number one, and I want to touch on this again at the very end, but I didn't get that experience. I did not feel that, and there's a direct juxtaposition to another experience we had. The rear sidewall, they're screwing those together into the aluminum, and then of course they have to cover that up. Did not blow me away. Once again, I didn't love that. For $200,000 plus, or 150, or even $100,000 plus dollars, maybe a fiberglass rear cap would be nice to have, right? Something that you're moving that point of potential leak and giving it a better chance at not leaking, right? Mm-hmm. We see an entirely wood truss system, and the roofing in there, you go and you do the tap test in there. It's real thin wood. The roof is really thin. You've got batten insulation in there. The wood, granted, wood will have lower thermal transfer, but it's still like, like what? I didn't like that, because one compromise, it's your roof is shot.
Yeah, and they did reinforce in the roof, so they have a whole OSB deck, and then underneath only the specific places where they were putting things on the roof, they were reinforcing with a second deck.
Second OSB deck, yeah.
Yeah, so like under where they were putting solar panels, and under where they were putting the air conditioners and stuff like that, which I can understand, like, people are going to use it the way they're going to use it, but like in our instance, like, we would put more solar up there, and then we only have space on the single deck.
We were seeing that they were using like an Asdel glue, which is actually, I think, more than Grand Design was doing, but where I was kind of impressed with some of the Jayco's mechanisms where they're using aluminum and wood. You have the thermal disadvantage of aluminum, but you also have the strength of aluminum. That's not a terrible thing to see from the Jayco lineup. Grand Design is a very, very, very similar method, go figure, but I do think that the Grand Design roof is significantly better than what we were seeing on the Z line. Apparently the G line, the top of the line, the more expensive, heavier, bigger, badder boy, it's supposed to have a Phylon type roof, or it was fiber reinforced plastic, FRP, that is supposed to be 7 times stronger and all this. That is totally awesome. I'd love to see that. But TPO on something that costs over $100,000, just like, why? They know how to do it right. They were not doing it right. So they lay that decking down. You're still going to have some staples here and there from what he said, and then they glue the TPO roof down. So it sounds like that part's kind of done right. And then they're running a Turnabond over the edges.
Yeah, and somewhere in there too, I don't really remember where in the sandwich it goes, but there's a thermal like reflective,
radiant barrier?
yeah, like a radiant barrier that actually like you wrap your hand in it and it keeps your hands heating up pretty quick. So like,
yeah, I believe that's going to be right above the trusses, but below the decking, I think is what it was. So
that probably makes a difference.
it seems to. That's totally cool. And I'm sure that there is a big advantage there, but I didn't think, I wasn't impressed with the rest of it. So I kind of just wrote that off a little bit mentally. You got the batten insulation, and that's cool. If they do a really good job, that's awesome. They don't seem like they skimp on anything, but who knows? In my opinion, there is a lot of OSB that can potentially twist and create sharp edges, even though they try to, shave everything down and they sand it down and they sand where they screw that OSB in. They're sanding those areas down, and then I think they put a little tape over that. But at the same time, I don't know. There's a lot of things to potentially go wrong, a lot of movement points there, even though the OSB adds rigidity. One thing I did actually think was interesting is they're running two different types of Furrion ACs, and one of them looks identical to our turbo unit. So that's a 13.5K that they have. Typically, we were seeing that up at the front, and then the rear is the 18K chill cube. They were both called chill cubes, but I really want to try that 18K in here. I think that would just freeze us out. I think that would be awesome. But that was really cool. So I asked though, on like Grand Design, if I see one here and I come in 2 months and I want to order one or whatever, should I expect to see the same air conditioners? Yes, apparently so. They don't save that money making deals like they did with Grand Design. And we see that with a lot of Winnebago products as well. That does not surprise me. And I would be very interested to take the Newmar tour to see how they do. But the other thing from Furrion that I was really surprised about, I didn't know Furrion even made these, is solar panels, 370 watt solar panels. Apparently they are monofacial monocrystalline units. They're not bifacial. Grand Design was throwing in bifacial units, which really surprised the heck out of me. But these look really nice. Their attachment method looks pretty decent. I don't know if they're using VHB on the bottom of these, like Grand Design is, but they are definitely running screws down into the decking.
I think you mentioned butyl tape, maybe?
Butyl tape. Yeah, I couldn't see them doing butyl, but maybe. That could be.
And then it is prepped for another panel.
Right.
But not installed.
My only concern so they are running a lot of them apparently, and every one's a little different, but they're running a Victron charge controller, and it's a 150 charge controller, 50 amps total. He thought they were running 12 gauge wire, and 10 gauge would be more than adequate, right? Like more than adequate for everything that you want to do. You just swap your charge controller out and then you just run more in series to get the voltage a little higher to keep the amperage low. But he wasn't convinced that they were always going to be 10 gauge. And I was really surprised by that, but apparently they might be willing to help you as a customer when you go to upgrade those things.
Might be,
which was not super like convincing. However, here's the thing. They don't come with batteries. I was kind of surprised they don't even come with cheap batteries. And if they pass that savings along to you, that would be freaking awesome. But we saw where they were putting the money. It wasn't giving it back to the client, I'll tell you that.
Well, and I think after figuring out the price point on these trailers, he stated multiple times that they are trying to keep themselves in this price bracket, that they're already at the top of the bracket and they don't want to price themselves out. And he said this multiple times. But then it feels really bad as a customer to then like not get the batteries.
Savings, right? Yeah. You don't get a battery, you don't get an inverter. What? Why? And I totally understand that there's so many people like us that are going to take that unit, and we would reuse our batteries.
Yeah.
But if you gave me an AGM, I'm going to go ahead and just sell that. Totally. Yes, like I understand there are people like us like that, but to not give us even the cheapest Renogy inverter and 100 amp hour lithium, right? Like especially when lithium is super cheap. What are you guys doing? I don't understand that whatsoever, but that might not be an issue for a lot of people.
Right.
But that makes that unit, like if you're driving at home and you have a long drive home because you found a dealer 2 days away, if you don't want to go to an RV, you just want to go to Walmart, good luck. You don't have any power, like you can't use your fridge, which I actually thought was interesting. They're using a lot of 12 volt Furrion fridges in there.
I just don't see these Brinkleys being rigs that you can boondock with, really.
No, I mean, I think that you can, but I think it's going to take a significant investment in order to do it. You know what I mean? Like you can't just start and go out today and then improve when you have more funds, right? And it's not a beginner's rig. That's what, and he agreed with me. He goes, no, this is for the people that know what they want. They know how to do these upgrades themselves, but you're paying a premium price, right? If I'm putting the damn thing together, give me the discount for putting it together. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But both ACs are inverter-based models. So if you put a decent battery bank, even slightly less than what we have, I think with enough solar, I think you'd be all right running those. At least one of them overnight. I think you'd be okay with that. There were a lot of talks about wanting to kind of vent leaks and things like that and using Eternabond in the right spaces. But what I wasn't seeing was adequate Eternabond use over any seam. Every single seam needs to have Eternabond over it, in my opinion. We weren't seeing that. We had slides, you might have it on one side of the slide and the other, but you don't have it across the entire edge. And if you look at Happily Ever Hanks, their slide and their Solitude actually fundamentally failed, right? It kind of rotted from the inside because I think the Darko was collecting water and sending it through the OSB, and that was an expensive repair for them.
Yeah.
And that was a nightmare situation because it caused all sorts of other issues too. And so like those little things might be better prevented with a Eternabond, but a Eternabond can be a real bear to deal with, especially if it fails and but when we're coming from like an Escape that is just, they built it right to begin with, they spent the extra time just making it all fiberglass anyways, preventing seams or sealing seams in advance.
Right.
It's like there's way too many seams on these damn things. He made a really big point about how they screw in a metal plate for the fascia around the slides. That's really cool. Like,
screw from the backside, yeah.
Yeah, you have less staple marks. Fascia was not like a solid piece of wood, right? It's like either lumber core or MDF. I was impressed with the ingenuity of like, oh yeah, screw from the back. That's cool. But it wasn't a functionally better experience. I also noticed some misalignment in some of those pieces too. I don't know if you saw that. But the top piece was here, and then there was a little bit of misaligning on that finished unit we toured. I also noticed that they're using a slim rack system instead of a Schwintek system, and apparently that gives them a little bit more play. So you're less likely to have issues, and I don't have any experience with that to say yay or nay. Some people love Schwintek, some people hate them. Schwintek's kind of the standard. Slim rack is fine for smaller slides apparently, and that's what they're using along with hydraulic systems. But I think overall, painted or non-painted, and the painted ones, by the way, $24,000 upgrade. That is crazy. That is insane. I mean, and they look beautiful, but like, what?
I'm not paying $24,000 for it.
No, but although your partial body paint, and I think the G line you pay for that, it's included in the price, which I respect, right? There's a customer for everything. The partial body paints I think look really nice. And instead you also do receive, other than on the IX line of travel trailers, but you are going to receive a backup camera standard, which I think is like, no duh. Where's
no brainer.
With Grand Design, why is that not standard? The entirety of your kitchen and a lot of these, and it's layout dependent, right? But the entirety of your kitchen is in a slide. They're using thermal material over the front, which a lot of these guys are, including Jayco. That's cool. It was like a selling point. It didn't convince me. Like, no. It's fine. A little bit of moisture barrier. That's cool. He did point out the dovetailing and like how heavy the drawers are. And he goes, this front is real hardwood. And I'm like, cool. That's generally not where I'm going to have the issue, right? I mean, I like the nice plywood drawers. I like to see it. I like the dovetailing.
They did put 100-pound drawer slides on it.
That's a lot. I don't know that the rest of the cabinet around it is going to hold up if there's a small leak or a moisture event, or you leave a vent open, right? And when you winterize on accident. And although all vents are Max Air with the built-in cover.
Yep.
Love to see that.
Yep.
Something Grand Design did not offer. Some of these things, when you're going apples to apples and you're looking at price to price, you might save a heck of a lot of money going with like a Grand Design product. So like you got to decide what matters to you. And when it comes to build quality, I'm not seeing it. I really wasn't seeing it. Electric awnings, sometimes multiple electric awnings. That's cool. Ladders built in. They look like a pretty decent quality.
They were nice. They seem like nice ladders.
They're just screwed in though. I guess a lot of them are, but they're not bolted in. What would be really cool is to see a bolted in ladder, a little bit more sturdy, but
they do have a hitch as well that can hold up to 300 pounds or tow 3,000 pounds.
I did see a lot of rain gutters.
Which are nice.
The little downspout deals that redirect the water out. That is cool. That's nice to see, like by default. Their frameless windows do open a little bit more, I think up to 6 inches, more than the competition. So I think a lot of times it's like 2, 3, 4 inches.
Yeah, so they made it so those arms fully extend.
Unless you're getting the G line, you're not getting really good backup lighting. Even at the Z price point, I want to see that backup lighting, you know what I mean? And so they integrate it with the taillights. Apparently it does give it a little bit of light. Light me up, dude. Like, and we were seeing that on the Solitude line. And the slam latch doors, that's really cool. Hydraulic fluid access and the ability to throw in lithium batteries and a charge controller that's upgraded and, all this other stuff. Like, yeah, it's really cool. Really nice access, like with any fifth wheel, or you can run the Jenny in there if you want to. I mean, I wasn't unimpressed with the storage, but that's with any fifth wheel. And it's more than what we need. Pretty neat. It's not nearly as neat, in my opinion, as like our Escape. Going into this whole system and like upgrading it ourselves, that was pretty damn easy.
Yeah.
Relative. And yeah, the fit and finish, I think the fit and finish was really good. One thing that I asked, I'm like, you have no molding at the top. There's no trim around the corners. in the ceiling. And he goes, yeah, that's because we make our own roofs ourselves. He said there was some technical reason. And I thought that was interesting because I could see that actually being a failure point going down the road, and you start to get gapping there. And it's just more unsightly than anything.
Yeah.
You know, I obviously we don't have one.
Yeah.
We can't say. It seems like it wouldn't happen for quite some time, or if there was not a failure point, right? Like rotting. But yeah, I was like, oh, that's pretty, I mean, they're pretty confident. You know, they don't need that extra molding, and one less place to put staples. Furniture quality, super unimpressed. It felt like
it's RV furniture.
it was lower quality than IKEA. And that's the thing. Those are the contact points. It's like you can do the best frame if the rest of it fails day-to-day use, right? Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good your foundation is. They had a nice pull out.
Oh yeah. They had a pull out in their island. They had a drawer that pulled out that had a trash can and a recycle bin spot.
Yep.
And also had a top drawer that had a paper towel roll holder.
That was cool. Yeah.
Which are all the things that I complain about our kitchen.
Yeah, we need
any RV kitchen. Really.
Any RV, yeah. And so they also understand lighting in general. Really excellent. A lot of indirect lighting. They do use puck lights, but they're not right there in your face. They have a lot of indirect lighting, all LED strips. I was very, light sconces were also very good.
Yeah.
But those weren't your primary source of light.
Aesthetically pleasing.
Super aesthetically pleasing. And yeah, they're running that Furrion. The shades they have in there they're pretty good. I do notice they have them installed backwards. So I don't know how easy. I know ours are super easy to swap around when we did that.
He was explaining the system because the lady that was on the tour with us actually pointed out that the shades in the bedroom are not blackout shades. They're just curtains.
Yeah.
And she was like, what, why? And he was like, well, it has to do with like how these attach to the frame, with the handles and the this and the that. So I don't actually think it would be that easy to flip them.
We did like to see, they have a big, beautiful metal sink in there and a little bit of it's a steel sink with some sort of covering.
Some sort of coating on it that felt really nice. Like it was like hexagon pattern. Like it had like I don't know. It was supposed to be some sort of like anti-slip, anti-scratch sort of situation. It felt nice.
And we really liked their oven setup that they had. The oven part is a little bit, on the smaller side, but all RV ovens really are. But
we just don't need our oven. We have an air fryer, but it's fine.
For us, and the Furrion
fridge.
Yeah, again, lighting and a lot of cabinetry that was just excellent. Just excellent indirect lighting. Right?
This is just like a very like intricate thing, I think. But like all of their handles on all of their cabinetry, they were that really pretty, like very in style, like light gold champagne type color. But what I noticed is when you pull on them, they're not round, they're square. And so they had sharp edges, basically, like not sharp, but like hard edges that would dig into your hand. Like it didn't feel great on your hand.
It's not a great user interface, let's say. The bathroom did not blow me away. Like they were adequate bathrooms in the Z3100 we went to. Like, yeah, it was fine. There was nothing inherently wrong other than the material quality. Right. The wallpapered crap, like I don't like to see that. But they look really nice, and I really like the mirror they had in there. They also used, again, indirect LED lighting in the bathroom there. It was just wonderful.
It looks nice.
A little more spa-like. And then again, the good fan. And I think they're also ducting the AC in there. I thought that was nice. The bedroom, nothing at all to write home about. I mean, good storage, but we've noticed that with any of these. Yeah. They have that front cap storage. It all depends on your layout too. But a nice placement for the TV. You have a little bit of hideaway storage. I did notice that the shade went left-right in there instead of up-down. Was something I saw. I also liked the door catcher. It was magnetic. So it kept that door in one place so it's not slamming or, flopping around. Just common sense things like that, they're superb at. But I will say, I'm like pushing on the wall in there, and that wall is flexing. And it was every wall, interior wall. Does that matter to you? I don't know. But when I go and I push on a wall, I don't want to feel like it's going to fall right in. I like actually feeling like it's solid. I have something that, my money's well invested, and you can feel and see it. Yeah. Feel, see, and hear it, I should say. They do have a multiplex system, and I thought that was interesting. They have overrides underneath. I like to hear that. I noticed the same thing with Grand Design. This system, I had some questions about, but it wasn't entirely digital, which I respect. They also, given that they warranty for full time, this gave me a lot more peace of mind than our Holiday Rambler. Mm-hmm. And we've had some issues with the Holiday Rambler. And when you have issues with that system, the multiplex systems, it's not good. You won't be able to put in your slides. You won't be able to pull up your hydraulic jacks in some cases, right? You won't be able to turn on your lights or your furnace, you know, all this stuff that is just like, why is this a problem? Like, we're not solving anything with this system. So that was kind of a nice thing, a little relief. I did see an on-demand water heater, and that's cool. Like, I'd like to see that in every unit now, but that, I mean, I also don't mind having a tank if it means I can run it with solar. You know, that's kind of a cool thing. So I also really like the rubber material that they put underneath in the storage bay. That was kind of cool to see. The gentleman also talked about how the speakers, instead of having a perforation up high, and then when you turn on your speakers, they go straight into your neighbor's campsite instead of like you being able to hear most of the volume, that these actually fire downwards and they reflect sound off of the ground. And I could see that being a huge benefit if you're going to use outdoor speakers. We would never use them.
Yes.
But it's cool. You're using a stainless steel, I think it was. It looked like aluminum to me, but stainless steel plating above the wheel well. So if there is a blowout or something like that, it's minimal damage. That's cool. Who knows how bad that... It doesn't look like it's a really bad replacement if you needed to.
An interesting thing that I found about their customer service in general is that they have like a customer support or customer experience team that calls every single owner at the 3-month point, the 6-month point, and the 1-year point after having their rig, and they ask them questions like, how are you using your flex space, which is like their little like toy hauler office, whatever space. How are you a full timer? How is this working for you? How, like, they're really getting feedback on the user experience and like how other Brinkley owners are actually using their rigs.
Super important.
At the 3-month point, 6-month point, and 12-month point, which I think is really interesting.
That leads me to my final point, and that is about the customer service and the customer experience. See, I have absolutely zero allegiance to any of these companies, but if I have a good experience, I'm going to tell you guys about it. If I have a bad experience, I'm going to share it with you. But what happened when we walked in 2 years ago to the Customer Experience Center, I think it's what they call it, or Customer Service Center, down here at Grand Design, right down the road.
The lady was nice as could be. Very chipper, very friendly, very helpful. Yep. Very nice.
She was amazing. And we remember that. She asked us if we owned one, and we're like, no, we just like RVs. And she's like, oh my God, well, thank you for considering and coming in and like wanting to learn more about Grand Design. And I'm like, and this is, by the way, is in the middle of the frame flex thing. And so you could see that she was like running around like a chicken with her head cut off. And she took the time to be warm and inviting. And like, I still get like, you know, I feel it. I feel it because she was so sweet and she was working so hard. Everybody that I've talked to about Grand Design has said the exact same thing. And they love their product or they hate it. But you know, that sticks with you. It's the human element, you know, because you can buy anything, and if you have zero support, then especially on something that's over $100,000, right? Like, that leaves an impression on you. And this one left a super positive impression, and we're not even their customers. But so twice we had these encounters. I had the first encounter with them, and I just want to show up for the tour. And it was, you know, unlike Grand Design, who I showed up unannounced and I didn't sign up or anything. They were like, yeah, let me find somebody for you. That was amazing, right? Like, whereas the Brinkley customer service person at the front, which I maybe she's having an off day, but my initial experience was like, what are you doing here? And she was confused, and she's like, who are you with? And this and that. And I'm like, what? No, I just want to see how they're made, you know? And she's like, you can go down to a dealership. I'm like, I don't want to tour them. I just want to see how they're made. When we walked back in though, today, we were an hour early because we were idiots, and she was a little bit warmer. She was a little bit nicer.
She was friendly enough. She laughed about it with us and was like, it happens, and like, it was fine. But I gotta say,
it wasn't the same as the Grand Design customer experience lady, like the 2 years ago that I still remember, you know. And then this gentleman, I think he was really a great salesman, and he actually had a background in being in sales. I didn't feel the love of the product. I didn't feel like, yes, this is a community I want to be a part of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He felt like he was proud of his job. He was proud of where he worked. He was proud of the product, but he didn't love it.
Right. Like, he's good at something. He's achieved something, perhaps. And I'm not saying this is actually what he thought, but like, that's the kind of the feeling that we got. Like, it wasn't a love for an appreciation for every customer or potential, because everybody's a potential customer, right? Like, we could tomorrow wake up and go, I want to own a Grand Design and I want a fifth wheel, right? Or like, we have 5 kids all of a sudden, right? We've just adopted, and like, we need a place to put them. Well, RE23 is not going to quite do it. You know, you never know, right? You never know where life is going to take you. And I would absolutely, I felt so much more favorable towards Grand Design than Brinkley. And it was both of the experiences, and it just like, it felt like they were pristine. You know, when the gentleman handed me his business card here, that is a guitar pick's thickness of, you know, and it's a wonderful business card. And I feel like this is where the money is going.
And he said, he goes, we make our business cards like we make our products, with high quality, which is such a line.
It is such a line, and I didn't feel the quality. I didn't feel the quality, and I also didn't feel cared about, even as a a potential customer.
What was actually interesting is that I think everybody should get a good experience.
Yeah.
But the people that had the Brinkley on the tour with us, actually, it seemed like he was giving them a better, more catered to experience than us.
Which there could be bias there. I asked a lot of questions, but it seemed like he was kind of cringing instead of like appreciating the fact that I would take the time and, you know, share and ask questions and be interested. And I don't know. I don't want to like, we might have a little bias on that, but that's kind of what it felt like. It was like, it
wasn't bad. Like, I wouldn't say it was bad customer service. I wouldn't say that it was like horrible.
It was
feedback. Fine.
It's just feedback. Yeah.
It was just fine. But like, when you're paying that much for what they claim to be that high quality of a product, you expect high quality customer service, and it was fine.
It should be extraordinary. But I gotta say, especially in direct juxtaposition to the Grand Design tour that I took, which was an impromptu like visit, but I was there at the right time. I was blown away. I was blown away. Even if the product itself didn't blow me away, the customer service did, and I felt like I made a connection with somebody. Versus feeling like, all right, I'll tell you this because I have to. I don't know. I feel like we harped on it a lot, but I don't know. I would rather have a warm experience with somebody with a cheap business card or no business card at all, and just remember them because I remember them instead of remembering them because of their business card, and then realizing like your factories are extraordinarily expensive and these business cards alone are extraordinarily expensive, and that's what I'm paying for as a customer.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah. I do wonder though, because I did not go on the Grand Design tour with Joel. I've only gone on this one with him so far. If we were to decide overnight that we wanted to buy a fifth wheel and we walked into a dealership tomorrow, are we buying a Grand Design or are we buying a Brinkley?
Honestly, I'll throw Alliance in there and Jayco. I honestly, I think it would come down to Alliance or Grand Design. Because I also remember having a really good experience with the Alliance team as well. Mm-hmm. The product, I think, at least, what was it, 2-3 years ago? I think we need to revisit. But like, I don't know, the Alliance did it for me. And I still remember that, right? Because it felt like they were building a lot better. But honestly, I think I'm going to say, I think I definitely liked the Grand Design roof better. I liked the experience better. And I definitely liked the price point better. And I don't love them. They're stupid expensive still. But I think it was just overall, it impressed me more.
Okay.
What do you think?
I didn't take the Grand Design tour, so I don't think I can speak to that. But I did like the Alliance tour. Mm-hmm. And I think I would take an Alliance over a Brinkley, based on my remembering.
I think that's saying something. But you know, I think we have a little bit of a bias too, because obviously like our budget level, if we were to be considering, is a little lower, you know, and I hate the buying experience of RVs, but like this gentleman was like, yeah, you could probably get like, you know, what, 20,000 off these, something like that.
Yeah. He said the most he's ever seen taken off was 27%.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't like that experience. I'm like, just give me one great price, or give me your best price, right? Don't dick around with me. And so, anyways, yeah, I don't know. It's a different experience. And then when you think about like the Escapes are definitely built better in every way. They have less features, and I think that's really I mean, if you're gonna fault them for anything, and you can only do so much with these huge fiberglass shells, right? Like, or these itty bitty fiberglass shells. I think they use them as best as they can. Yeah. And that in itself is
highly functional and highly aesthetically pleasing.
And I do think that while these fifth wheels, even for the money, I don't think they're going to be standing in another 20, 30, 40 years the way that this will be. Yeah. But if you're looking at an Escape travel trailer and you want to learn more, go ahead and use the QR code or the link below. Get in contact and save a few bucks if you do decide to order. And let us know your thoughts. Do you own a Brinkley? I know there's a couple Brinkley owners. I hope this didn't offend anybody. These are just our opinions, our experiences. Yeah, do you have one? What has failed? Inevitably, something has failed with you. You know, we share our own failures in our own trailer and how we fix them. And, you know, some of that is how they respond and whether or not they continue to make the same mistakes, which we've seen with other manufacturers, or whether they go, that's not an issue, or that's your fault, which we have seen with other manufacturers. And what do you love? What do you hate? What would you do differently? And if you bought a specific model of the Brinkley, would you buy that one again, or would you buy something new, and why? Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.
Bye, guys.
Bye.